Today we are going to do a book review of General N.C. Vid's new book, The Kashmir Conundrum, The Quest for Peace in a Troubled Land. General N.C. Vid is one of the most respected names in the domain of strategic and defense studies in India and commands a high level of respect in the India strategic community. Now, what are the key takeaways in this book? Firstly, General N.C. Vid talks about the diplomatic, political, military, historical and all the strategic angles that should be covered and creates to be a comprehensive version of a Kashmir's saga so far. It is also important for us to understand the relevance of this book in the current times, wherein the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, issues such as counter-insurgency strategies and the failure of the government of India to address the issues of counter-insurgency have been very clearly addressed in this book. General N.C. Vid talks about the concept of Kashmiriyat to be a multilingual and a multi-religious identity that the Kashmir has and plays a very important role in the history of Kashmir. One of the most important points discussed here are the pressure points that India is failing to assert on Pakistan, due to which the insurgency movement has failed. He believes and strongly argues that the Pakistani establishment is not in favor of a peace strategy to India, because they believe in a parity between India and Pakistan in terms of security and military capacities and also sharing of resources. If we remember Muhammad Ali Jinnah's famous statement in 1947 when we got partition, he said that we have got a moth-eaten Pakistan, which means that he was referring to a scenario wherein the Pakistan hasn't got enough justice in order to tackle India. Their whole objective has been completely exposed and clearly explained in this book. Next important point that General Vid has discussed is the accession of Jammu and Kashmir has been a complete process, and its plebiscite is not a question that has to be arisen now, because Pakistan did not withdraw its troops after 1948 and it did not create a scenario and a situation wherein India could give a proper response to Pakistan in terms of its division of strategic and international forces. And this is the reason why he believes that the plebiscite is out of question from the national mind. Moving on to the issue of abrogation of Article 370, General N.C. Vid says that it is a complete process and cannot be retrieved back again. Whether it was done democratically or not, it is very important for us to integrate Kashmir into the Union of India, and the process would be complete with the abrogation of 370. And this process is important as he believes that it completes the process of a security dimension that was so lagging since the independence. General N.C. Vid's belief is that once this process has been completed, the deconflictization of the economy from the Pakistani insurgency can be reduced, and Government of India can develop strategies in order to have a scenario that would be successful in order to create a situation for all of us. Also, in one of the chapters, he talks about the 1972 Shimla Agreement and says that it was both a success and a failure. Taking up 93,000 prisoners of war was a situation that India had a greatest military victory in the 72 war. And this explains that India has had a scenario that would create for itself defense capabilities in order to tackle the situation of Pakistan most efficiently and effectively. Because in any situation, if we analyze, the two-front war would be created, and the first vulnerable state that would be subject to this security situation is Jammu and Kashmir. From both the fronts, from the eastern as well as the western fronts, the attack of Pakistanis and Chinese, the common Kashmiris are the ones who are going to suffer because of this. And he says sooner the better, deconflictization of Kashmir's economy as well as the society is very important. One of the key goals discussed here in this book is the de-radicalization of Kashmiri population. It is very important for us to understand why Kashmiri population has been radicalized so far. It is not just a religious issue, but it is also a political as well as a social issue that has haunted Kashmir. The peaceful Sufi shrines and Sufi movement that was there in Kashmir has been taken over by the Wahhabis, and a complete Islamization of the ISIS nature has been taking place. And once we get rid of the ISIS mode in Kashmir by deconflictizing and de-radicalizing the population, the issue of Kashmir's aggravation would come down and significantly help the Kashmiris to integrate themselves with the rest of the country. General Vij also talks about a very important concept of Kashmiriyat, where he believes that Kashmiriyat is not just, as everyone says, Kashmiri Muslim identity. It is also the identity of Kashmiri Hindus, the Kashmiri Gujjar Bakarwals and the Muslim population that exists there, and also the Leh and Ladakhis themselves also associate with this homogenized and harmonious concept of Kashmiriyat. General Vij's Kashmiriyat depends upon the strength of India with its diversity and pluralism. And along with that, we have to remember in this occasion two very important quotes that former governor of Kashmir, Mr. Jagmohan, had said, and which is also reflected in this book, which is that he talks about Kashmiri politicians and says a very interesting thing. Jagmohan says, Sheikh Abdullah was a communalist in Srinagar, a communist in Jammu and a nationalist in Delhi. So the different colors and the chameleon nature of Kashmiri politicians is well exposed. In his biography, he also goes on to say that most Kashmiri politicians are adept at speaking in two voices. They could be secular as well as communal. They could be democratic as well as dictatorial. They are accessionist as well as separatist and pro-Pak. Underlying motivation is never the principles and the welfare of the ordinary Kashmiris, but it's always power. So the nature of Kashmiri politicians is equally important along with the central government's strategy and failure that has also occurred. And another important thing that we have to focus here is the Operation Sadbhavana that the army had conducted. And General Vij mentions about why this Operation Sadbhavan and the effort of the army is a very limited and a sub-tactical approach. It is a good military action and has had a good impact with the local commanders and the local population of Kashmir. But beyond that, it has no strategic implications in order to deracinate the mind of Kashmiris from issues such as severe Islamic radicalization and also integrating them with the rest of India. Another important thing that I have tried to read between the lines and what he seems to suggest is that we need a communication strategy organization that needs to be set up in Kashmir, and that would be successful in order to do better perception management and not just put up the placards and hoardings of saying that we are doing a perception management and go ahead and do it. There must be a long drawn strategic effort, there must be a strategy, there must be a national planning and a proper goal setting motivation that needs to be involved in the making of a proper strategy in order to resolve the issues that have haunted us so far. It is important for us to also understand that the hybrid wars are not fought in a single domain, but they need a comprehensive approach and a strategic culture that should evolve in both the military as well as the political establishment. And this should also be conveyed to the bureaucracy who handle the administration, who is currently handling the administration of Jammu and Kashmir. Better late than never. There should be a delimitation exercise that should be successfully carried in the Jammu and Kashmir, because there is a democratic exercise of elections that is lacking since 3 years, and it should be conducted as early as possible. As Prime Minister Modi said, it is not just that we have a artificial attachment to Kashmir. It is important for us to have an intrinsic attachment to Kashmir. Dil se duri and Dilli se duri should be completely gone off, and there should be a complete bonhomie between the Kashmiris and the rest of India in order to have a deconflictization and integration of the Kashmir state with the rest of India.